All right, I'm going to go ahead and start, guys. Today is February 26th. It's a Thursday general meeting, and we're going to be talking about the recent AirSnitch paper that was released yesterday in NDSS. Okay, just by show of hands, can you guys let me know if this is your first time here? What's your name?
Isaiah.
Isaiah? Have we met before?
Yeah.
What was in a class? CTF? Do you remind me?
It's friends.
Friend? Oh, okay, that would make sense. All right. Well, anyway, welcome Isaiah to GreyHat. We are like GT's premier student-run cybersecurity club. We meet every Tuesday and Thursday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Tuesdays are CTF, like technical capture the flag training. Thursdays are more general social. We bring in sponsors, like just general other stuff. If you haven't already, please join our Discord, where we primarily share our notifications and announcements, like when we're playing upcoming CTFs, other events we're hosting, and so on. And we're also posting on our Instagram now, so feel free to check that out if you'd like. Okay, just to kick things off again, Magnet is still hiring for interns. They've got 4 vulnerability research positions open, and if you're interested, go ahead, give them a scan and check it out. Anyone need the link, or have you guys already gotten it? You need it? Okay. All right. Moving on. Okay. Oh, the slide's out of order. Okay. Yeah, just move. Okay. How many of you guys have heard of the upcoming Student Lend CTF this weekend? Okay. How many of you guys attended, or was there a last meeting where their website was still down? We still can give you like a concrete end time for the CTF. All right. So good news on that front. They finally fixed their website, and now we can see all the information for their CTF. In particular, it will be going from Saturday, February 28th, starting from 1 p.m. to Sunday, Sunday, March 1st at 1 p.m. So solid 24-hour CTF. We'll probably be meeting in Student Center or some other location that we're going to announce closer to the date. It'll be fun. Also, it's a qualifier CTF, so if we do well enough, they will fly us out to Sardinia. So I'm not gonna, like, this isn't an academic division CTF, so I'm not gonna make any claims about how well we are or are not likely to do in this competition, but it should still be a pretty good learning experience. We'll like have some good opportunities for you guys to work on interesting challenges. We'll be having mentors circulating in order to work with people, same as usual. Also, after that, we've got DICE CTF calls the weekend after. There have been some rule updates, so it looks like they're primarily doing like a US, Canada, and a general open division, and then recruiting people who place well in those to come in for finals. But yeah, we're still trying to figure out what that is going to logistically look like. CTF captains are talking about potentially doing a merger with other like teams in order to have a better chance of qualifying, but that remains to be disclosed. Okay, but yeah, TLDR, Sternline is this weekend. We'll post more stuff in the announcements channel sooner to then. If you haven't already, get the CTF ping roll from the roles channel. Okay, and again, if you compete with us in the CTF and solve a chow and create a write-up for it after the CTF is over, you can go ahead and fill out a form, which will allow us to add you to our website as a competition team member and feature your write-up on our publications tab. Okay, so we also have a couple of other open roles at GreyHat. We're actively recruiting right now for the LM CTF agent project. Oh, dang, okay.
Thanks.
Great, Chris. Okay. But yeah, the LM CTF agent project, if you're interested in doing engineering work or security research work to help us build out our automatic challenge solving capabilities, feel free to go ahead and scan this QR code. I'm not sure like right now if we have like a concrete end date for when we're going to stop receiving applications, but you should probably submit the application sooner rather than later. We're going to be a little bit more open and accepting of new members this round. So if you're rejected previously, feel free to reapply. Additionally, we're planning on hosting Rec CTF in the next couple of months. If you're interested in authoring a challenge for that, feel free to fill out or shoot either Nash or me a Discord message. Anyone else need this information? Okay, moving on. All right, also, we're going to go ahead and announce that we're currently working on hosting or at least planning a speaker event with Professor Jerry Perillo. You might know him from if you're like a freshman this year. he came to the Week of Welcome event and like talked a bit about his enterprise cybersecurity management class. Jerry's a really nice and cool guy. Joined the New York Stock Exchange, or like a company that was acquired by New York Stock Exchange, as well as a startup. Eventually, like climbed the ranks through that, and eventually became the Chief Information Security Officer. So I guess like right now, the exigence for his talk is that there's a lot more startup or like equity heavy offers on the market right now, and a lot of students have come to him asking questions regarding like, how much is like this offer worth relative to what my goals are, or like, what am I expecting out of like an RSU versus like some equity option for a startup. So if you have those sorts of concerns or are generally curious about how to evaluate different offers in this sort of space, you should definitely consider coming to this talk. I know Jerry personally, he's again a really nice and great professor. All right, so AirSnitch. How many of you guys came to today's talk specifically because of the topic, out of curiosity? Okay. Okay. Have you heard of AirSnitch coming into this? No? Okay. You heard of it? Where did you see it?
You just saw on the Hacker News.
Hacker News? Okay.
Stumbled upon it. I thought it was quite interesting that there was a vulnerability in layer 2 and 1.
Yeah. I also saw it on Hacker News first. And I think like from there it kind of spread to like Reddit and other social media pages. But I'll talk about that more in a sec, right? So what is AirSnitch? Why are we even talking about this? Well, it came up to my attention when I was browsing Hacker News, ended up getting picked up by like technical news blogs like Ars Technica. You might have heard of like Tom's Hardware. The paper itself was actually published in NDSS, which is a top 4 security research conference. If you ever like end up doing research at GT in like a technical area, top 4 or like top tier conference will probably come up. There's like a list of 4 that are specifically relevant for technical security. It's like NDSS and a few others. I think like NDSS obviously just posted or published their papers yesterday. So, which is why we have all this news coming out this morning. Out of curiosity, how many of you guys have done research before or have heard of NDSS? No one? None of you guys have done research? Dang, okay. Wait, what years are you guys? 2, 3, 1, couple more ones. 3, okay. Interesting. Okay. Okay, so I guess like before we even get to that, I'm going to give like hopefully a decent primer on like introducing like network stack and like kind of motivating why we even care about like what is this layer 1, this layer 2, and why like this attack in particular is particularly interesting. So out of curiosity, has anyone here heard of the OSI model? Yay, a couple of you guys. Okay, so how many of you guys have taken a class like network or like intro to networks or like intro infosec? Keep your hand up if you're currently taking it. Okay. I guess like where do you hear about OSI for the first time? And you just want to raise your hand?
I simply learned it. I think 2200 kind of goes over it as well.
Oh yeah.
My main interactions with it will be the compute networking one, but they don't basically go to the OSI model most because my professor hates the 7 layers and loves to keep with the original. I forgot how many layers.
The 4 layer?
Layers.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess like the alternative to, or like one of the main alternatives to the OSI model is the TCP/IP stack, which takes a lot of the same ideas of the OSI model, but condenses a lot of the layers into more logical aspects rather than what you might consider as like, like physical. I guess like, sorry, condenses them into like the physical way that we would think about and actually implement these the stack, as opposed to very clear and distinct entities within the OSI model. Okay, but yeah, anyone else want to talk about where they like first interacted with OSI, or is it also just like class? Okay, fair enough. Okay, on that note, given that about half of you guys have taken 2200 or some like similar class that is discussed by now, can anyone list all 7 layers? Kevin?
Some of them.
Sure. We can try.
Can I name at least like the 4 layers, because that's what my professor taught me.
Well, here's a question for you: are the 4 layers like directly with like the 4 layers of the TCP/IP stack? Do they like in and of themselves constitute direct layers within the OSI model?
They're pretty similar. I feel like. One example would be like the presentation layer, which is basically the application layer. It's just there's some like nitpicks about it that I'm not too familiar with.
Sure, I guess that's fair. Well, I guess you just listed two of them, presentation and application. That's like what you want. Like, I guess I'll just go ahead and say they're closer to the top of the stack, what the user sees.
Was I model have physical? I feel like they
Yep,
should.
OSI is physical.
Data link
It does have data link.
to transport
It has transport.
network.
Okay. I think, yeah. The only one you're missing was like session at that point. But yeah, I really like this graphic. But like TLDR, we're using the OSI model to model how computer networks work. OSI is generally better for kind of talking about things in a very abstract conceptual sense, whereas TCP/IP, from what I've heard, is better in like actually how you'd go about implementing and actually designing your like physical stack. OSI was created by ISO in 1984. It's got an ISO spec associated with it, 7498. But the main takeaway I want you guys to see from this is that we're basically abstracting away everything from, like the physical hardware we're working with to like all the protocols we use in the middle in order to handle like routing, and then how we like clump our data together so when it gets like sent over the wire to like routers and whatnot, we know like how to like efficiently, or I guess like in a standardized fashion, network it to different devices in our network or across the internet. Above that, we've got like the session layer, which is responsible for handling, like if you're talking with a server in a long-standing fashion, like how are like your interactions with it supposed to be standardized so that all parties involved know how to interface with it and like understand it essentially. Presentation and application, I guess similar enough, but you can think of presentation as more like the data standards that specify like, these are how we commonly talk about data, whereas the application is supposed to be responsible for taking that data and presenting it to the user in a manner that the user can directly interface with it. So I guess like good examples here for presentation, we've got specs for like HTML, for like PDFs and so on. Whereas the applications might be like Adobe Acrobat or Google Chrome, which actually use those data. Anyone have any questions about OSI? I just wanted to like quickly make sure that you guys are at least familiar with this. Okay. So if I were to say like, bring in a router, like what layers of this stack would that be directly applicable to? Where? Network, yeah. How about if I have like, an Ethernet cable with like literal bytes going over the wire?
Wait,
Physical? Okay. How about Wi-Fi router? Or sorry, I already said Wi-Fi router, sorry. How about like specifically just like the access point and the radio signals that are going into the air? You guys speak up. Data link? Close. I'm talking specifically about the radio signals. Okay, I think typically it'd be classified as physical because even though like, it's not like, I guess like a way to think about it is that if you're using like an access point and you're connecting your device to it, it's literally like Ethernet over the air. Like you're sending bytes back and forth between the router. Like if we're say talking like a level up and we're talking about like, the actual network frames that are getting sent between, that would be more data link side. Anyway, it's maybe too much technical detail for that side. Yeah, and then more like specific protocols and technologies that are used at each of the layers. Okay, so in particular for today's talk, I thought it would be most important just to cover layer 1, layer 2 in a little bit more depth. I guess like just to make sure we like really concrete on this. Again, like physical layer, literal bits over the wire, radio signals are also included here. This also includes any physical hardware we have technically. And we can use the physical layer to think about our network topology. It's like the literal devices that we're working with when we, going all the way from like our laptop or phone or whatever we're using as a client to the access point and all the way up to say like routers to the internet. All those leverage the physical layer in the capacity of, they all are transmitting data in some fashion. And the actual mediums that you use to do that, say like physical wires, radio signals, like optical cables, would all be constituted as physical. Data link is one step up from that. It's how we actually make sure that our data transfer is error-free. And it handles a little bit more of like how we're actually framing our data and communicating about, like who is what. So it also handles the physical addressing. So like if you've seen like MAC addresses, the actual, it's like the stand in between, like, right, the physical layer and like your like IP, right? Like you want your like it's your physical layer is like your physical hardware, and you can have your network interface card act as like a stand-in that can identify your device specifically and allow you to be able to go from, hey, I am this person, to, okay, I'm actually streaming the data in and giving it to my device. That was a little convoluted. Do you guys follow along? Okay. Yeah, in addition to this, like typical hardware at this layer that is very directly responsible for data link layer would also be network switches and bridges. Switches are responsible for connecting different devices together within, like, I guess, a physical capacity. So like, say like you have your router, which is responsible for taking your device's input and sending it off into, like, say, the internet, and handling all the communications with that. You might have a switch between like your physical clients and a router if you wanted to make it so that all of your different devices had the capacity to communicate with each other, or like otherwise centralize them before you can send them off to a router. In that capacity too, like there will be a network interface card associated with that switch, which will be responsible for doing that same streaming. A network bridge is similar to a network switch, only with the main difference being that rather than interfacing between multiple different devices, you're instead interfacing between different like networks. Okay. So how many of you guys have heard of Wi-Fi before? Just a few of you guys. Really interested in the people that are on their devices. Like, I'm really wondering how you're connected to the internet right now. Anyway, okay. But yeah, there's an official spec with this too, of course, IEEE 802.11. The goal of this is essentially just to have Ethernet but wireless over the radio. Radio meaning like any sort of radio signal. They define like specifically what channels and bandwidths are associated with the official Wi-Fi spec too. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. Okay, I'm just going to give a quick crash course on some essentials you need that you need to know about Wi-Fi before you proceed. Okay, so terminology, we've got access points. These are the main things you actually connect to. They're actually responsible for, like you say, like, oh, I'm connecting to eduroam. The eduroam is the SSID of that access point. It's like a name that this access point is providing for you to connect to. Access points can technically have multiple SSIDs and virtualize this, but more on that in a sec. You'll have like your base station and responsible for enforcing most of the actual protocol level rules for Wi-Fi. Obviously your clients are going to be your devices, like your laptops, phones, whatnot. They send your traffic to the AP where it goes from there. So every Wi-Fi device, as I mentioned before, has its own unique MAC. The MAC's physically burned onto your network interface card, but because of the way that's implemented, it's actually trivially easy to spoof your MAC. If you want to just there's no, I guess, like hardware or like physical limitation that prevents you from, making like your own like little device that pretends to be a MAC, or sorry, pretends to be a network interface card. And instead of like whatever it's supposed to say, it just generates something arbitrarily. This is important because obviously, like if you're using your MAC to identify what device you are, if it's trivially easy to spoof it, then you can have some issues with your traffic routing, you might say. How many of you guys have seen like a address that looks like this? How many of you guys have not seen an address that looks like this, I guess? Excellent. Okay. Thank you to the people in the room. I'm actually going to stop right there. Okay. Okay, out of curiosity, for the people who raised their hand about having seen something that looks like a Mac before, in what context have you seen it? Vishal?
So this is weird. I was trying to get iMessage working in a virtual Mac OS virtual machine, and with that you have to use a specific MAC address for iMessage to be iMessage to recognize a Mac as an actual. The virtualized Mac iMac as an iMac instead of a different device. So you need to do like a address.
Okay. So like, does Apple keep like a registry of allowed MAC addresses that are associated with?
Apparently.
Okay, I guess that makes sense, given that the actual way that you guarantee that all your network interface cards have like, physically unique like MAC addresses associated with them, is that there's like some governing body that's responsible for issuing out different ranges of MAC addresses to different companies so that they can use it for their hardware. And through this manner, I know that there's some people that can like literally glance at MAC address and say, oh, that's like a MacBook. just because of the specific range of MAC addresses that are allowed to be MacBooks. Okay, moving on. Okay, so let's talk more about the data side, right? So when we're actually transmitting data over Wi-Fi, we're not literally sending like physical bytes up and like expecting that to go through all the way. Sorry, we are saying physical bytes, but when we go past like say like the network interface card level, like we aren't really necessarily thinking of like physical bytes going through the air, unless you're like specifically looking at some physical layer problem. Usually, like you're thinking more in the context of a frame at the data link layer. So what's this frame going to contain? Well, it's going to have the MAC address of the sender, the MAC address of the receiver, the actual payload, like the data you want to be sent over this message, and other metadata, which include like timing, flags of the frame, and so on. But even when like this frame is encrypted, say like if you're using a protocol that is helping you like hide what is being sent over your frame so that eavesdroppers can't snoop on you and figure out all of your network traffic, like your confidential passwords and email and so on. The frame headers are almost always visible still. The timing and size are also visible just because the actual routers themselves need this information without decrypting in order to actually process the frame itself. And also like the physical signal properties are never hidden because it's the physical signal. It's like literal radio. Okay, so like food for thought. Like what if we leverage all of these additional signals of metadata that are being sent with every frame as a vehicle for a side channel attack? Okay, so think about that for a bit. But anyway, moving on to like actually how Wi-Fi is encrypted. We've got two different types of keys that are used commonly in Wi-Fi encryption. We've got the pairwise key, which is what you might think when you have like your actual like router talking with you directly, and you want to be able to make sure that only you two can see that traffic. We've got like the pairwise key, which is what that's called, and it's like specifically trying to protect your own like how do you say? It's responsible for protecting your direct traffic with the router. In contrast to this, we also have the group key, which is responsible for more broadcast event type stuff. So like say when you're initially joining the access point for the first time, you'll get broadcasts that get sent out. You'll send that broadcast out saying, hey, I'm looking to connect to this SSID, or you'll have broadcasts being sent through the air of the router itself, identifying, hey, I am this access point. Feel free to shoot me a message if you want to connect. You guys have like the general idea of like why we have two different types of keys. Okay, so can you guys think of like any potential limitations of like having say like this group key? Like obviously it's very convenient, right? Like you can send this message out into the air and the correct router or whoever device is supposed to be reading it can just pick up on it and like connect with you directly, right? Figure out like how to go from there. Yeah.
Seems like possible if you're on the same network as somebody who's supposed to be receiving this packet, that you could pretend to be them and give the packet as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to reiterate that, like if you're on the same network as someone that's supposed to be receiving the packet, if like you have access to the same key as them that they're supposed to be receiving, you're also able to decrypt their traffic with respect to that. Okay. What else? Yeah, that is like just the main limitation of this, obviously. All right, it's like super convenient to have like this group shared key that everyone on the network is using because it makes it really easy for the router to like coagulate all the different radio streams that are supposed to be associated with them and filter it out from say like other radio signals on the same wavelength that they are not supposed to be seeing. But the side effect is that everyone, because it's a broadcast, because like these are like messages that everyone like that, over radio, everyone can technically see. And because everyone has technically the same key, they can still observe and monitor those messages. Okay, so there's this concept in, I guess, like a lot of different parts of security called isolation. If you've taken operating systems, any of you guys sysarc? Okay, well, why are some of my sysarc people not? Okay, anyway. But yeah, like you would have covered this in something like operating systems. I haven't taken networking at this school, so, or I guess in general. So if any of you guys have taken it, feel free to let me know if you've covered it there. But I guess no? Okay, interesting. I guess like, okay, speaking at a high level security perspective, why do we care about isolation between devices in the general sense? Someone new? Any ideas? Feel free to like just shoot something. No wrong answers.
Like, obviously, you don't want to necessarily, your IP address, like an IP address can tell you like where someone's located. You don't necessarily want everyone who's seen like any of your tweets to know the approximate location of your house.
That's pretty good, yeah. So why does like having this sort of like isolation help with protecting user privacy in that respect?
The server can see like, where you, what IP you log in from, but like a random other user on the website or application wouldn't be able to see because they're isolated.
Okay. No, that's correct, I think. Yes. Okay. Yeah, so the main concern obviously is like privacy. You don't want to be able to have other people like know like, oh, like this is the device that is sending out all of the like this like specific traffic. Like say if you're talking about like your like bank information or credit card info over the wire, and someone for some reason is able to suss out, hey, like I can see that you're talking about these things, but I don't like, I can't break it or whatever, right? If you're in like some cafe, like what if you just could figure out which person's device it was and just go walk up to them and do fun things? Okay. Any other ideas for why like we might care about isolation in general? Like why we want to be the case that clients can't directly talk with each other? Just like remember, they can still technically communicate by going through the router or like through other network channels, but they are sorry, like through the switch, wherever like intermediate like layers are present for them. But like we're specifically trying to avoid the case where say like one device sends out a message and without like having to be like filtered or routed or otherwise like controlled by the like actual router itself or whatever like we're considering to be like our authority here, just talk directly to some other person's computer and send whatever arbitrary data they want. Anyone see any issues with this? Say like, what if I sent a frame over the wire that, told that person's computer that I'm actually Google? That would be a small issue, wouldn't it? Okay. I'll talk about this more in a second, but like TLDR, like let's just know that when we talk about like client isolation on Wi-Fi, it's primarily logical, like not at like any sort of physical layer. We're actually having our router be responsible for filtering out the packets. And like even though like there is actually like the data being sent through, say like you can send a frame to the router saying, hey, I'm claiming to be google.com and send it to this other guy in the cafe who is currently like trying to log into Google. Your Wi-Fi access point is supposed to be responsible for actually filtering this out and making sure that your correct data or legitimized data goes through. Okay, and again, just talk about group keys again. This is like the public shared key. This is one key that's shared by all the clients. It handles the broadcast, multicast, like control frames for the entire like wireless system. And in effect, because we're using a shared key for all of these communications, the client is able to decrypt some traffic that's not supposed to, or that's not necessarily meant for it. Isolation guarantees assume that this is harmless. This is specifically what AirSnitch goes on to refute. And GTK breaks the only intended receiver sees the traffic that you are sending for like some other or for a specified device assumption. Meaning that because of the fact like all this is still being sent like publicly through the air, even though like in theory we shouldn't be able to decrypt it because we have a shared public key for everyone, or I shouldn't say public key, because we have a shared key that is available to everyone. We're able to go through this traffic. Okay, so step-by-step AirSnitch, just this is what the paper primarily distills down to. So the attacker joins the Wi-Fi network. It's able to passively absorb the group traffic, just through what we talked about before with like the GTK. It's able to spoof identities and exploit the GTK handling in order to intercept and relay victims' traffic, and through that, it's able to achieve a man-in-the-middle attack. And there were a couple of other implications of it that were discussed in the paper, but I thought that this was probably the most interesting and noteworthy one. So again, why do we care about man-in-the-middle attacks? What is the man-in-the-middle attack? Any of you guys not heard of? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Corrected this given device, and you have a server somewhere in the middle. You have some base data.
Yeah. Okay. So just to reiterate for the people online, the idea was that we have like our client and we have like some like say server, and we have this like third party like perpetrator and staying in the middle. Normally the traffic's supposed to be going back and forth between the client and the server, but with this perpetrator, what we have instead is that the client is communicating to the server, but through the perpetrator. All the client's traffic is going to the perpetrator routes that to the server routes that back to the perpetrator writes that back to the client. What's the effect of this? Assuming like no like other security mitigations or encryption was in place. Should I just like call 3 of you guys up to the front? Any volunteers? Okay. You 3 come down.
I'm pretty sure the perpetrator could like potentially change the data. Well, if they're not changing it, they can also just get data that is useful and send that data.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. That's like the main thing that I was hoping someone would say. Okay, so you get like 2 different effects through this, right? If you have like, you know, like person A talks to like person B talks to person C, and your intended channel was supposed to be from person A to person C. If you had some private data that only the like person C was supposed to see, person B implicitly also knows that information. And let's just say that, you know, you're trying to set like, you know, do some sort of transaction to your bank. Like person A is like some user and person C is your bank account or bank server. If you send like a message saying, hey, I want to deposit like $100 into like from like my account to my niece's account or something, or my cousin's account. And like, you know, you do all the fun encryption stuff on your own end, like send it up to like this middle. And then if assuming like I'm not able, or assuming that I'm able to actually modify the traffic in a way that the server would still accept, I can modify that transaction to go from, hey, I would like to send $100 to a person I know to, hi, can you send me your entire bank account to my address? And then pass it up to the server. Okay. So hopefully that's a little bit like understandable why we want to avoid attacks like this. Fundamentally too, like because of the fact that this is at like the physical level, or I guess it's not physical, more data link level, we are able to like do this for any traffic that goes through like any sort of like this wireless network. I'm skipping over a lot of the actual like specific technical details just because I thought that going over like, oh yeah.
You say spoofing identities, is it just kind of just guessing at it and reinforcing it?
No, by like because of the fact that we were able to sit on the network and observe other people's like GTK protected traffic, we are able to like you know figure out like how they are communicating with the server. And the paper discusses this in more detail than I was able to like get onto this for the slide, but they were able to just basically figure out a way to make it so that when you communicate up back to like say like the like access point, whoever that was, you're able to make it think that you were the original person. Yeah.
Just a quick question. I'm confused how it be like how this attack would be encryption, because like even if I'm man in the middle, isn't the packet still encrypted? So how am I able to still read the data in the packet?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna open the original paper at this point. There was like a lot that they did in order to make this work. There was like if you guys would like, now that we have like this background done, I can go ahead and just send next week actually diving into like the really like core principles of why this actually works. But yeah, they're basically saying like leveraging the fact that even though like you can send messages to the server and like it'll try sending stuff back that might get rejected, if you can hack it at different layers, like at a time, say like we're doing it once at like we're sending some messages at the data link layer that are not like they're you know like updating like some other states like on lower sides, but are not getting passed up through the past like data link up to like TCP/IP. You can send another message directly to the TCP/IP layer that will spoof the router and make it seem like the router actually sent whatever you wanted upstream. At least is my understanding. But yeah, it's like they're literally hacking multiple different layers at the same time in order to refute some of the like security guarantees that we tried building in this layer by layer model.
I'm confused because like what if a company implements VLAN, then wouldn't that also isolate the ports? Like the VLAN, all it does is isolates the broadcast domain. So
Okay.
wouldn't that also mitigate this attack though?
So it just blocks broadcasts generally.
It's like the whole point of VLAN is that it breaks you have specific ports and each port has its own broadcast domain. And the whole point of that is just to isolate the clients.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I guess like fundamentally this entire attack works because we have this really shaky client isolation guarantee. If you have more mitigations that protect it and enforce stronger isolation guarantees between your different clients, assuming there isn't some way for you to spoof and like exist on the same VLAN, for instance, as like some client that you're trying to target. I'm actually not super familiar with the implementation of VLAN or how that's supposed to work, but assuming that you can't break their isolation guarantee, you should not be able to touch them in this manner.
So then how would this be a big threat if you just have proper VLAN management?
Yeah, I mean like I think like fundamentally like the main thing was just that if you're able to like break isolation at multiple different levels at the same time, you're able to create this attack that bypasses traditional mitigation techniques. Say like if you're on like, I guess like how is VLAN typically implemented? Do you just like specify your client and then say, hey, like I only want like this specific traffic to go through it, and rather than using GTK, it uses the like direct like pairwise key?
Not really necessarily. I think it kinda it's like hey, I want a port to send a message out to whatever location is, and then VLAN's like, sure, use a port, and inside that port will be its own individual broadcast domains. I think that's I don't know the really specifics about it, but like I know the kind of the broad idea how it is.
Is there any way for anyone else to be on that broadcast domain?
I believe not real. I think I'm getting confused between VXLAM and VLAM. There's two different ones, but I think you're allowed to be in the same port, I think. Or you no, I don't think you are actually. I think it's individual ports.
Okay.
I don't want to confuse myself further, so I never mind then. I just thought that maybe VLAN could mitigate this until.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so this looks like it isolates the broadcast down to, oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, so I thought wouldn't that mitigate the attackers?
Yes, it would, but this is like, again, like, at least from what I'm seeing right now, it looks like you're physically like, you have these separate channels for everyone to communicate on, right? So like, are like these like physical Ethernet channels or something?
No, it's called
No.
virtual lane for a reason.
Okay, so this can be done wirelessly too.
And I think it's like
Okay, as long as you have multiple different users within the same group, or you're physically able to exist in the same space as other users who are using the same broadcast domain, I think this attack still works, but I probably should look more into the technical detail of VLANs in order to make sure I understand how it interact with this.
that's all.
Okay, fair point. Okay, sorry, what were we talking about?
We're talking about the man-in-the-middle attack.
Oh, right, man in the middle. Okay. Yeah, I guess like another just key thing to note is that like in contrast to other attacks you might have studied in classes or before from the club, we don't have to actually run a malware on any of the client devices. We don't have to break any of the cryptography that handles like the actual communications between the like client to the like switch to the router or any other step of the chain or any other of the layer transgressions. And we don't actually have to pwn the access point. So comparatively very, very low effort and low risk. Like you're not necessarily like burning like a couple 100,000 on like an O day to pwn the router or something. So, which is why I think like the internet was kind of going crazy over it this morning. Okay, yeah, just going back again to man in the middle, right? Like because we're like this, the way that we frame the attack, we don't actually have to have like too many things going into it other than already being able to connect to a network. We're able to intercept the traffic and manipulate it. We're able to steal the credentials of other people who are on our network just because of the fact that we've pwned at layer 2, and any other privileged traffic would probably be occurring at like layer 3 and above, specifically like once we start getting to like application or presentation layer. We're able to do protocol downgrade attacks. How many of you guys have heard of those before? Yeah. Okay. You probably learned it in like the class like intro to InfoSec. Essentially, what you're able to do is that, like, say if you are trying to communicate with the server with like TLS 3.1 or like the latest version of some security protocol, but the server also accepts like say like, everything all the way back to like TLS 1.0 for backward compatibility reasons. If someone sends an outbound request saying, "Hey, I want to communicate using this super secure channel or this super secure method," you can downgrade them down to like this super basic one that has known vulnerabilities or known issues. And the server, if they want to continue the communication, is obliged to continue using that insecure protocol. And you can, of course, like upgrade it back on your end as the man in the middle to what the client expects. But except this time, you actually control it. And you can see all the traffic. Yeah, and another interesting thing too is that if you're able to say like get into an air-gapped system and join their network, you can still perform this attack. You don't have to actually like go through like the public internet or anything. So if you get into like one of the DoD's confidential like private, like this is being recorded. Okay, you guys get the idea. Oh, another interesting thing that they found in the paper is that like how many of you guys have ever like joined some Wi-Fi network that was like a single like router, but it was projecting 2 different like SSIDs. So like say like I think maybe I'm not actually sure if EdgeRem does this, but say if like you go to someone's like some business and they have like my company like guest Wi-Fi, and they have like the main my company Wi-Fi. This attack still works if like you're able to join on the guest Wi-Fi. You can still do this attack because apparently the GTK key is shared between the guest network and the main network. So you're still able to do all this. Yeah. So I think that was like the last slide, right? Oh, yeah. The main claim like at the end of the day is that the only reason this is actually able to occur is because the implementation of Wi-Fi client isolation is really inconsistent and manufacturer specific. And furthermore, doesn't really try to like apply security to multiple different layers together, and instead treats every individual layer as its own little security box. Here they had like a little table where they like bought a ton of routers, some like consumer grade, some commercial grade, and actually ran this attack or ran their series of attacks against it. And they were able to pwn every single one of them, either through the direct hardware itself, through this attack, or through one of the protocols that was their implementation of some of the protocols. Yeah, it worked on every router they tested. Okay, so given all this, and now that we've kind of motivated, this is kind of an impactful attack that we should maybe care about. How should we actually remediate this? How should we fix this problem? According to the authors themselves, they mentioned that you should probably be enforcing isolation at lower layers. Like this is just a direct appeal to the manufacturers before like the framed encryption or processing. And we also need to like redesign like fundamentally this kind of protocol and system that we use for, or not I guess protocol, but like this entire like system architecture of how we're redesigning, or sorry, how we're like restricting group key usage across like the entire like broadcast channel. Yeah, we need to be able to strongly bind like the identity, encryption keys, and the isolation policy for each of our devices. And just furthermore, like rather than leaving it up to manufacturers to handle this client isolation problem, there needs to be some sort of standardized and like unified spec for all of this. And just some other thoughts that I found like floating around the internet, leveraging like a unified spec for client isolation is one of the main things that come up. Additionally, like another idea was using a technique called zero trust. How many of you guys have heard of zero trust before? It's kind of like a corporate buzzword these days. Anyone care to like take a stab at trying to explain it? No one? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
That you verify every, like all the information that you've been given without like trusting it. And it's blindfold.
Yeah, that's perfect. So I guess like in the traditional model of like, how you like would implement security in a network, you have this idea of trust but verify, where you trust everything implicitly, but then you also go ahead and like verify it too after like afterwards in order to like ensure that hey, like this is still what we expect. I guess like one way that I've heard it framed is that zero trust implements trust and verify. You can still trust things, but you need to make sure that you're also like verifying that every single step in order to make sure that it continues to be like what you expect the communication or the communicator to be. So I guess like a way that you would implement this in practice, right? Like say that I'm doing some sort of like communication back and forth between a server and a client. Like a traditional model might have like our initial key exchange in order to establish like trust and identity between our client and our server. I say who I am and verify who I am. Server says who they are and verifies who they are. And once that channel is set up, we send messages freely back and forth between each other without any additional verification. A zero trust method might be to, rather than like after doing this initial key exchange, we also have some system that at every message verifies that I'm still the same person sending the message. Yeah.
I was wondering what's your opinion on like in order to like have zero trust and like have a standard. I was wondering like would it even be possible to have these companies be come up with some standard way to enforce the isolations in these clients, right?
Yeah.
You know that IPv4, it like the move from IPv4 to IPv6 is it takes quite a long time. Well, probably because the internet's probably big as well, but also like it was quite hard to have everyone agree upon that IPv4 is the only protocol for network, if that makes sense. So what's your opinion and if it's even possible?
Okay, that's a really interesting question you phrased. I guess like you're kind of comparing it to trying to get companies to move over to IPv6 from IPv4, right?
Essentially, and that's kind of like relates to like, do you think companies, it's possible to have companies like use the standard for client isolation, I guess?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think at the end of the day, like it will probably like if there is any sort of transition from like one protocol or like one like system architecture to another, I guess system architecture is probably not the best word to use here, but like some system design to another, it'll probably be gradual and over time. But like I've heard that like leveraging ideas like zero trust for like protecting network traffic have been already in the works for a while because like it provides other guarantees as well. And from what I'm hearing on the internet, at least, it seems that seeing incidents like this that are widely exploitable attacks that work right now because we do not have zero trust implemented will encourage, to put it loosely, some of these larger companies to pick it up and start moving over to it. Other questions? Yeah. Yeah, I guess like the main thing is that there's still a lot of like they don't seem so big as limitations, but like as far as like a wide scale like mass like worldwide pwn or something, you still need to have like the core thing you still need that makes this like, very hard to I guess that adds a lot of friction to actually exploiting this is that you still need to be physically connected to the network. Like if you could somehow connect it, if you're already were in everyone's walls, like maybe this attack becomes a lot more feasible. And I guess that's like probably some nation state out there like eyeing this and working on their own like I guess that's the other thing too, right? Like what we have right now that's been publicly released from what I've seen are like this research grade lab implementations. For like an actual like say threat actor, they're probably gonna have to adapt this to match their own use case and environment. I know set up some malware payloads associated with it. Or actually I guess like this attack in particular, it's just leaking out information. But yeah, it's like a combination of finding like a good target and actually having the capability to exploit it. Like obviously this would be super high value if you could do it within like some enterprise environment or some business. Like I guess a lower stakes environment might be like if you could go set up in a cafe. Like this is a practical use case that people are talking about. Like people are recommending that we trust like public networks a lot less, at least for the immediate future. So I don't know, like next time you go sit down in like some cafe in Midtown, maybe like beware. Starbucks, you've been warned. Okay. Yeah, that's all I had for today. If you guys would like, it seems like you guys were mostly interested in this. I can go and do a lot more of a technical breakdown of the actual like how they actually implemented this attack. Maybe I could also set up like some lab environment on like my like virtualized lab environment on my computer in order to do a simulation or something. But yeah, like let me know what you thought of this. It's a little bit different, I think, than maybe some of the other talks we've done in the last couple of weeks. All right. Yeah, you guys are free to continue discussing this. Yeah, thank you.